Hi everyone and welcome to my sixth and final book critique. This week I decided to focus on yet again another genre and I chose poetry. Sorry if I sound a little sick. I have a little bit of a cold. The books that I read this week included Shadow, translated and illustrated by Marcia Brown from the French of Blase Saunders, who originally wrote the poem after her experiences in Africa. The genre is poetry and picture book, and it is a Caldecott Medal winner from 1983. This book was very interesting to me because it personified shadows, but particularly the African experience of shadows, which is apparently a much deeper experience focused on village storytellers and shamans of the African culture and how this idea of a shadow being a dark image is passed down throughout generations, and that's how they view them. I thought it was really interesting because I've never really thought of shadows like that. Second book that I read is called Hush, a Thai Lullaby. It's written by Min Fong Ho. Pictures are by Holly Mead, and the genre is poetry and picture book. It's a Caldecott Honor book from 1997. And this book is very similar to Hush Little Baby, the common lullaby I think we know in America. And this lullaby is a little different because it focuses on different animals that this woman has on her land and how she wants them to be quiet because her child is sleeping. And through all of her efforts, eventually the baby wakes up, and while she's asleep, he's sitting there with his eyes open. I thought it was a cute little story. The third book that I read is called A Visit to William Blake's Inn, Poems for Innocent and Experienced Travelers. It's written by Nancy Willard, illustrated by Allison Martin Provenson, and the genre is poetry and picture book. It did win the Newbery Medal winner in 1982, and it's a Caldecott Honor book from 1982 as well. This book basically focuses on all of the travelers who visit William Blake's Inn. There's a lot of animal characters, and it focuses on their experience as well as the human experience at this inn, and I thought it was a very neat book. It's very well illustrated as well. Fourth book I read is called Casey at the Bat. This is a ballad of the Republic sung in the year 1888. It was reported originally by Ernest L. Thayer. It's illustrated by Christopher Bing. The genre is poetry and picture book, and it's a Caldecott Honor book from 2001. I think we're all familiar with this. I remember singing it in school in music class. So I originally know it as the song, but it's kind of broken down into a poem, and it's very well illustrated. It has newspaper clippings throughout, and the newspaper clippings, some look like they may be from that time period, and others are just a template that the illustrator used to do all of his thankings and stuff like that. And I just thought it was really neat to see it portrayed like that. That leads me to my feature text, which is called Dark Emperor and Other Poems of the Night. It's written by Joyce Sidman, illustrated by Rick Allen. The genre is poetry, picture book, and informational book, and it is a Newbery Honor Book winner from 2011. And this book I chose because I found it very interesting. It focused on nocturnal animals and this idea of the night, how some animals come out at night and they're wide awake, and it's important for them to be up at night, but we're all asleep. And it kind of gave me a different perspective on night, and I thought that was interesting. So half of the book was poetry on the left-hand page, and on the right-hand page there were actual facts, which is why I also classified it as informational, because the facts kind of helped you understand the poem, and that's why I thought it'd be really neat to read this in a high school level class. So that leads me to my first lesson, which is nature poems. So I would do this with grade 11. So first we'd read the text during a poetry lesson, of course, and we would use a nature word generator that I actually created. So I used the glossary in the back of this book, actually, and all of the featured words throughout the text, and I created a generator. And students would have to randomly choose 5, the first 5 that they get, and then using these words, they have to write a piece of concrete poetry, which from our poetry lesson is a piece of poetry that is shaped in a way that portrays the meaning of the text. So like, for example, if you were writing about ladybugs, it would be shaped similar to a ladybug. There's actually a piece of concrete poetry in here that is an owl, which I thought was cool. So their concrete poetry is going to be about nature at night, and considering the book focuses on animals and nature in the darkness. So after writing, students will exchange poems with a partner for editing and revising purposes, and then these poems will be submitted for a grade. So my artifact is a nature poem. So my 5 words that I chose for my generator, which I created on Generatorland, which is very easy to use. You can input your own words, choose lists that are already on there. It's just something quick and easy you can do for an activity or something like this to spice up a lesson. So my 5 words are moths, abdomen, migrate, sport, and snails. And I was a little nervous about creating a poem, but I did, and I shaped it like a flashlight, or what I imagine would look like a flashlight. That's why I have a picture there. for one reason, because I kind of focus on the nighttime being a time of rebirth and light, even though it's dark. It's kind of an oxymoron. And I thought I could also look like a mushroom because I do talk about spores, which are primarily found in mushrooms. So my poem is: darkness settles over the horizon, sparking a nervousness in my abdomen, like moths fluttering in the midnight air, smelling here and smelling there. Nature settles into the confines of sleep while other creatures choose to creep. The snail emerges, preceding a trail of slime, while songbirds migrate, leaving the spring night behind. The night is a time for the release of spores, reproducing fungi at open doors. The doors of life provide a new light, a light only seen in the dead of night. And I just thought this would be a fun activity and a little challenging to make a concrete poem because I had a little difficulty doing it. But it's also a learning experience, so I thought it would be fun. My second lesson is called Popcorn Poetry, and this will be also done with grade 11. So first we'd read the text and then arrange the desk in a circular fashion. And the students will write a poem together, a class poem, by choosing one line from each left-handed page which contains the poem, in order from beginning to end of the book to create a completely new poem with a new meaning. So these lines will be read aloud and then written on the smartboard for all to see. And then I will start the poem and with the first page and a line, and then randomly call in another student, and then they would call in another student, etc., like popcorn, popping from one student to the next. This technique is used to make sure that all students are paying attention, and then this will continue until each student has had a chance to contribute a line of poetry, making sure that no student is called on more than once so that everyone gets a chance. So my popcorn poetry artifact is: welcome to the night. Each night, snail unhooks himself from earth. Evening unfolds like a primrose, and you swivel your sleek satellite dish of a head. I stand in silent gravity and stick to it, a sprig of leaves, a tuft of grass, waiting for the first chirp. Without a sound, so brave and so bold, he drops down. Where has it all gone? I just thought this would be fun as an introduction to poetry, a poetry lesson in high school by starting with a children's book and doing something like this, just to get them into the swing of things and the hang of creating their own poetry. That's all I have for this last book critique. Thank you guys for always